Our next speaker is the CEO of Beazer Homes, Allan Merrill. Now, Allan joined Beazer Homes in 2007 as Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. He was named President and CEO in 2011 and was elected their chairman in 2019. Now, Allan is also involved in several housing industry organizations. For instance, he was elected to the board of directors of Freddie Mac in September 2020 and recently completed a 4-year term as chairman of the Leading Builders of America, which is a trade organization of the country's largest public and private homebuilders. He also serves on the policy advisory board of the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard University and on the board of Builder Homesite, Inc. He's a graduate of the prestigious University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business with a Bachelor of Science degree in economics. Now, Allan's presentation is titled Burn the Rulebook, the Radical Future of Homebuilding. And while that might seem like a hyperbolic title, I just want to add a personal comment here. I got a chance to meet Allan at the Vision House project that Green Builder Media did in Las Vegas, and there is absolutely no hyperbole to his presentation title. He really means it. So, Allan, it's good to see you again, sir.
It's great to see you. Thank you for a very generous introduction. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Mike. And Allan, welcome. Just so happy to have you here. We've been working with you on the Vision House Las Vegas. It has been such a pleasure to work with you and the entire Beazer team, and really excited to hear what you have to say. So I'm going to just dive in unless you have anything that you want to say before we get into our Q&A.
No, just, hey, thank you for having me. It's nice to see you again, Sarah. Congratulations on 20 years of Green Builder Media, and I think your 9th Sustainability Symposium. I'll try not to mess it up for you so you can have a 10th year.
Great. Well, Allan, Beazer's commitment to building 100% zero energy ready homes nationwide is a bold move. What inspired this decision, and how are you making it scalable in real time?
I thought a little bit about this. Honestly, good ideas have lots of authors, but there are probably 2 themes that I think I would say are at the core of this. One of them is kind of personal, and one of them is a little bit more traditional. You know, personally, I've always had a bit of a rebellious streak in the sense of disliking what I call false premise choices. You can have this, or you can have that. And, you know, just an example, 2011, when I became CEO, I actually was also in the market to buy a car, and, you know, CEO of a company. So, hey, I could buy a car that has high performance, but I'm also oriented to wanting to do something that is sustainable, that's more economical. But the choice at the time felt like you could have one or the other. And, you know, this isn't breaking any real ground, that I'm certainly not trying to get into politics, but I bought a Tesla, bought one of the first Teslas made. And I have to say that was kind of an embodiment of an and, not an or. Here's a car that's a performance car, and oh, by the way, it's also got environmental characteristics that were unprecedented at the time. Now, at becoming CEO, I was at a point where we were trying to decide who we wanted to be as a company, and I thought about who our buyers are and what false premise choices they were confronting. Our buyers then, and even today, really largely fall into 2 groups. We have a group of buyers that are first-time buyers who definitely are interested in sustainability. They're interested in affordability, access, attainability. But a different group of buyers that we might call active adult, not their first home, may or may not be their last home. They know what quality is, but they absolutely want certainty. They want reliability. They want affordable monthly payments, because at that point in their life, they may be you know, on a fixed income. So we looked at that buyer profile, or that mix of profiles, and said, really, the biggest issue that those buyers are confronting is they don't know, and because today they can't, that they can have, or that there's a possibility of having a super efficient, high performing home that is still attainable. And it was really that sort of breaking that dichotomy, this thesis that you could have one or the other, and trying to create an and that we could do both, that was really at the epicenter of why we made the leap. We committed to Energy Star in 2011. And when we got to 2020, it was an obvious evolution for us to jump into zero energy ready.
Thank you for explaining that. Now, most builders are still dipping their toes into sustainability, and I'll say most of the major production builders. Maybe they're spotlighting energy efficiency, some are heading towards electrification, but Beazer is just diving in head first. What does your here and now look like on the path to carbon smart, climate resilient housing?
So for us, it's about quality, comfort, and savings, and what are the ways that we can create quality, comfort, and savings. And you know, I can give you a lot of metrics, but you've got to control the building envelope. So for us, a really important measure is ACH, or air exchanges per hour. We're insistent that all of our multifamily communities, or duets, or townhomes, condos, have ACHs under 2. Our single family homes are under 1. When you get that kind of control of the building envelope, you have a great opportunity to really control air quality, to control temperature. And so that's really a building block for us. Of course, we've got super low ACHs, but we're also water sense. We're also using fire resistant materials. We're also developing communities that are lifted from a lot and a grading perspective to withstand more than the flood of record. We're using drought resistant wildflowers to ensure carbon sequestration on our sites. So those are all elements of site selection, site design, and the homes that we build that are designed and delivered today at scale in every one of our markets for all of our buyers.
So Allan, our thesis here is that business as usual in the building industry is dead. And so talk about the mindset shift that home builders absolutely must make to survive the next decade. What, if you were advising a room full of kind of traditional builders who were clinging to outdated practices, what would you tell them? What's the wake-up call that they need to hear today?
Well, I like to say, Sarah, the other team gets paid too. So I'm pretty humble about giving advice. I would make a suggestion, I think, which is, I think a lot of our peers and a lot of companies are in the space of they're interested in this, but they run into a stumbling block, which is, how confident are we that customers are going to pay for the things that we're doing? And we're the first to do it, so we're kind of the test case, and jury's out. Like, we knew that when we did it. But I'd ask a slightly different question, which is, what happens if? And I will say when, but to a cynic, you might say, what happens if customers start to become aware that they can have a home they didn't know they could have, that it's not an or, that it's an and? And that's where my suggestion would be, kind of channel the Boy Scout motto. You know, the Boy Scout motto historically was, or I think it may still be, the scouting model, be prepared. And I think there are 2 things that I would suggest. The first is, understand that it is a complex system of materials, design, entitlement related issues, that you can't just change a product and improve the performance of your home. So you better have an understanding of the complexity of all of the parts and pieces that are necessary. And then the second part would be, what's your plan for implementation? Now, I would allow that others may be smarter, faster, better than us at getting there, but it's taken us 15 years to go from Energy Star to being fully zero energy ready, and really almost 5 years through the pandemic to get fully zero energy ready. So I think understanding that it is a complicated system, and then knowing what your triggers are to kind of enact that plan. I mean, I think best case for somebody who convinces themselves or is persuaded that this is a value proposition that customers demand, you're 2 or 3 years away from being able to deliver it at scale. So be prepared.
So Allan, let's pivot a little bit. The home search process is still deeply outdated. How do we better align today's sustainability conscious consumer with homes that reflect their values and evolve the buying experience to meet this moment?
So this is ironically a little bit of a personal question, because in the year 2000, I left a banking career to go be the first president of an online listing site called homebuilder.com. at a moment where it was super clear that advertising and search were moving from the print world to an online and digital world. So I feel like I was in on the ground floor and a part of this shift. But it's a little embarrassing because 25 years later, I don't think we've made a lot of progress. We still are searching with algorithms, not with values. We can specify beds and bath, we can specify zip codes, school districts. There are all sorts of inputs we can apply that don't begin to get at the preferences, your word, the values that buyers have. And honestly, my belief is, and I'm quite confident of this, that AI and agentic AI are going to create the capacity for consumers to have their lifestyle, their values, their beliefs reflected in their search. Now, I'm not confident that third parties are going to execute this at scale, but I think consumers taking control of their search process are going to be able to use smart agents to act on their behalf for a lot of things, including home search. And I think about things, Sarah, like where do I shop? Where do my kids go to school? What's my, where do I work? What's my commute pattern? What kind of car do I drive? What preferences do I have in media that I consume? I don't want to give all that information to somebody else. Like privacy is a very big deal. But if I've got a smart agent that's inside my cyber secure environment that knows those things about me, that agent is capable of making much better recommendations about the kinds of homes, the kinds of lifestyles that are available that I might not have found if I had simply done an algorithmic search for square footages, for bedrooms, bathrooms, and zip codes. So I feel pretty passionately that this is coming soon. And in fact, our audience, you could actually test this. You can use any one of the large language models and construct really intentional questions around home search, and you'd be surprised at the disparity in the answers that you get compared to what I would call the more traditional real estate search engines.
Well, I love what you said about matching values as opposed to using algorithms. That's very astute. Now, housing affordability is at a breaking point, even though wealth and innovation are at an all-time high. You and I have talked about an interesting idea of yours that involves fractional ownership and the democratization of housing. Can you unpack what that might look like in practice?
Yeah, I mean, this is the point at which people might want to roll their eyes because this is going to sound a little kooky, I suspect. But I think about the primary challenge in the housing industry right now is one of affordability. There's an imbalance between the quantity that has been produced and the demand for that, and it is contributed, among many other reasons, to an affordability problem. Now, we could spend time thinking about how do we reduce all the input costs? How do we lower land costs, labor costs, material costs? I think it's really tough. So I've sort of looked at it from the other side, which is what are the financial elements associated with attaining homeownership? And there are really two big ones. What's the down payment? What's the monthly payment? And the bigger the down payment is, the lower the monthly payment is. And so when I think about this problem, I really think about how do you source down payments to make homeownership attainable on a different scale and to audiences, to demographic groups that have otherwise not had that opportunity. And then I think about the good fortune that I know my kids will ultimately have when they're homeowners, which is they've got a private bank. They've got a private bank of mom and dad. I'll do what I can to help my kids be homeowners. But I realize not all families, not all prospective home buyers are going to have that luxury. And so I was thinking about this problem and sort of surprised at how generous people can be in a spontaneous way with things like GoFundMe pages. A circumstance arises and we see GoFundMe. And I started thinking about what if GoFundMe was reoriented toward homeownership attainment? And just stay with me for a second. You think about all of the people that might be in your sphere of influence who are interested in and willing to invest in your home ownership. It may be your mom and dad. It may be a cousin, a friend, a sibling, a child. It may be an employer. It may be anyone that has a stake in your happiness, your financial success. Well, philanthropy is awesome, and we're really involved in it. But for it to truly scale, I think there needs to be philanthropy and so how do we connect not just GoFundMe, the idea of a contribution, but with actually having a stake? And this is frankly where I think blockchain is going to find a tremendous use case. I think the idea of using an immutable ledger to capture and track fractionalized ownership interests in residential real estate is a solution to a core problem. I think it creates the opportunity for all of us to syndicate our ownership interest and to keep record of what that ownership interest looks like, and ultimately to provide a return of capital and maybe a return on capital to those who have invested with us in our pursuit of home ownership. So that's maybe more words than I needed to use, but that's how I think about using technology, and in particular ledgers, blockchain ledgers, to democratize access to home ownership.
Allan, it's a fascinating concept, and I know you've just given me, and I'm sure everyone in the audience, a lot to think about. What role can builders play in scaling this concept responsibly?
Well, I think that this problem is bigger than a builder problem. We need our mortgage industry participants. We need the title industry participants. We need local government participants to agree that there is an allocation opportunity here between the wealth in our society and the attainment of home ownership. And if we accept that that's an opportunity and each contribute ideas for how to make it work in our framework for tracking home ownership and recording legal obligations, I think we can get there. But we need advocates. We need people who share ultimately the objective of making home ownership more attainable. I think builders can be a part of that solution, but we certainly need industry sponsorship to realize it.
Agreed entirely. We need all of the various sectors to walk in lockstep if we're going to continue to make the progress we need to make. So let's talk a little bit about energy. How are you thinking about renewables, battery storage, and matching consumption to supply in real time? Is the future grid interactive, and are we building homes that are ready for that?
Well, nothing like a really complicated question. I think a lot about this. It's daunting. Honestly, we don't have, I don't believe today, the capacity to have a national turnkey solution to this problem. Our grids are regional. The electric utilities are typically local, and weather patterns and climate are different regionally. The way I try and unpack this area is, first of all, is sort of the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. And in this case, it's use as little as possible. And so our focus has really been, let's focus on limiting to the greatest extent possible consumption. And I think with her scores in the 30s, gross, before any offsets from renewables, that's a really good start, because then you start to get to a place where an offset and a full offset becomes the physics of that, in the case of solar, become feasible. So the first thing is you got to get consumption down. When I think about production, I have a really hard time thinking about production without storage. And I think that those two things go hand in hand. And where it gets particularly complicated is the storage costs are falling. They need to fall a lot further, but then the interactivity with the grid, that is a legal problem. It is a regulatory problem. It's a technical problem. I think there are solutions for that. There are a lot of industry participants that are trying to attack parts of this, but I think for our residential housing stock, I think limiting consumption through better building practices, I think on-site production, particularly through solar, wrapped into storage and deeply integrated into the grid, is the way we can harden our grids. We can reduce the cost of production. and I think create a better environmental outcome. So I do think that this is a very big part of what's coming soon in housing.
Indeed. Now, let's shift to another incredibly significant and essential topic area, which is resiliency. You and I have talked about homes that outsmart climate chaos. Do you think about AI as a feature or as an operating system for the home? And what does a truly AI-powered living environment look like?
Wow. So that's you're right. That's another complicated question. I think when I think about AI, and let me start there. I've tried to explain this, and again, I'm not a technologist. I'm not a scientist, computer programmer. So this is a layperson's explanation. But the way I think about, particularly the large language models that most of us have had opportunities to interact with, I think of them as libraries. They have a certain quantum of information. And they are, I think, over time becoming, many of them, quite specialized. So think about this. You might have a science library. You might have a French language library. You might have a physics library. Well, in the same way, I think we are seeing language models and AI tools develop with very domain-specific applications. So when the relevance of this is, when I think about the home and I think about living in a home, I think what needs to happen, and I think what will happen, is there will be models that are trained on what's in the home, that are trained on the lifestyle of the person who lives in the home, and the ability to interact in that library with that collection of information, I think can be a real force multiplier in allowing people to enjoy and frankly sustain their home ownership. I mean, a home that knows what's in it, that knows what you need as you're aging in place, for example, that is able to anticipate the way in which your lifestyle is going to change, making recommendations for the things that will extend your ability to stay in your home. So I think about it as an operating system, I guess, Sarah, but I think I'm really focused on what are the questions that homeowners in occupancy have about their home, and what sort of data sets and what kinds of models can they be trained can be trained so that that homeowner can interact in that specialized library. I don't want to be out on, a particular platform that's generic. It doesn't know me. It doesn't know my home. I need a platform that knows me and knows my home. And that's I think within eyesight. We can see that. I don't know exactly when it delivers, but I believe that that is going to make the experience of homeownership more durable and more sustainable.
Thank you, Allan. We have just a couple more questions, and so I'm going to encourage folks from the audience to type in any questions that you have for Allan into the Q&A box. We probably won't get to all of them just because we need to wrap this session up in just a few minutes. But Allan, I'm going to start with a question that came in to me via text while we were talking. And it goes back to Beezer's decision to commit to going to Zero Energy Ready certified across your entire portfolio of homes throughout the country, which you'll achieve, I think, by the end of this year. And the question, though, is really about the fact that that was a bold move. And, knowing that you could face blowback from your shareholders, you did it anyway. You did the thing, as you like to say.
Yeah, we did it.
So how can other CEOs, particularly of large public builders, but just in general, garner the same level of courage to make that kind of commitment? And what advice, I'm hearing what you said earlier about, being hesitant to give advice, but asking again for, what advice would you give to them?
I think a public company, a company with shareholders, public or private, has to seek a sustainable way to generate a return on the capital that they've been entrusted with above the cost of that capital. I mean, that is the mathematical, financial imperative for companies that are owned by others. doing what everybody else is already doing, some of whom have been doing it longer, have been doing it faster, bigger, more, seemed to us a really unlikely way that we were going to create a sustainable, durable opportunity to generate returns above our cost of capital. You know, it's the old adage, you might as well be yourself because everybody else is already taken. And I think for us, realizing that there were some really fearsome competitors in our space, great companies, well-capitalized companies, tremendous operators, going into their sandbox and trying to outdo what they do felt like a really, really tough way to make a living. So that's where courage comes in. If you're not going to do what everybody else is already doing, you got to figure out what can you do that maybe everybody isn't doing, but it aligns with customers that you can connect with. And then frankly is aligned with a vision that you might have of what the future looks like. You know, I'm convinced that there's more that we agree on if we would just talk to each other than we disagree on. And I think about our buyers, and I think that there are Prius owners who wear Birkenstocks, and I think there are folks who ride cowboys on ranches. And we might try and categorize them politically or by some other means, but I can tell you about both of those buyers. They don't want crap on job sites and extra waste. They don't want to spend money on utility bills that they don't have to spend. So for us, this idea was less about trying to pander to a small audience, and it was more about finding the things that hold us together, where we have shared interests that other people aren't already doing. So that was our journey. You know, outcomes for others may differ, but that's kind of my take on that.
Thanks, Allan. All right, and I'm going to combine two questions into one, and please understand we have about 2.5 minutes until we've got to wrap up this session and send everybody into the next one. But is Beazer, do you have any plans to offer warranties or home maintenance or insurance as a part of your offering? That's part one. And part two, in 30 seconds or less, how are you navigating the economic uncertainty right now?
So on the warranty and insurance, we do have a warranty program. We are innovating in that space, and I don't want to show all of our work, but I will say we launched a charity home insurance initiative about 5 months ago, and I'm excited about it because our homes are different and they're better. And the insurers are starting to see that. And as a result, our buyers are having access to insurance opportunities that they wouldn't have buying a different home. And I'm excited about that. We have committed that anything we make in that space, we will contribute to our charity foundation as we do with our title operation. So we are interested in that, investing in that, and frankly, I think creating value for buyers there. In terms of navigating the uncertainty, the way I think about that is to try and run the business on a 3 to 5 year horizon. It's not the most popular quarter to quarter, but we publish multi-year goals. We update our multi-year goals. This day, this week, this month may not be exactly what we thought, but if we stay committed to a multi-year horizon and do what we say we're going to do, I think that will serve us well in the end. And you know, it's been more than a decade in this seat. I think that's worked for us, and I think that's what we're going to keep doing.
Well, Allan, we appreciate your long-term vision. It's refreshing, and I think it's working. It seems to be working for you. So thank you also for your time and your insights today. It is always a pleasure to be in the same room, but particularly to share a stage with you. I look forward to doing it again soon. And thank you again for being here with us today.
Thank you very much. Congratulations on 20 years.
Thank you.